Kurt's a Democratic strategist, NewsNation contributor, former advisor to the House Oversight Committee. And Kurt, you can take that first on this. This news is just in because it's kind of interesting given the politics of the day. I'll play a clip from Rick Scott in a moment. It looks like Trump's going to still have to have other people do his talking for him outside the court, like what we saw earlier. That's basically what the judge said, right?
Well, you reap what you sow. His track record here speaks for itself. This is someone who has been repeatedly now held responsible for violating the gag order. On what planet does any judge think that, oh, well, this time you're going to adhere to the guidelines, so we're going to loosen this up for you? This is someone who just the other day was, faced with the prospect that if you keep doing this, you might actually get jail time. Like, that's how far this has gone. And let's be very honest here. Any other defendant, if it was anyone but Donald Trump, would be held accountable in a lot more severe way by now. So he has been given extraordinary leniency compared to what average Americans have to face when they're going through the judicial system.
So if Trump can't say it, then to the point I was making a moment ago, surrogates perhaps can. The senator from Florida, Rick Scott, is in New York today in court. And earlier he held this press event outside the courthouse. And here's what he said.
The judge's daughter is a political operative and raises money for Democrats. You've got the lead prosecutor's wife that is a significant donor to Democrats, and I think to Biden. So this is just a bunch of Democrats saying, we want to make sure that Donald Trump can't talk.
So this is obviously a strategy, Caroline. Is it a smart one from the Trump team to have other people do the talking if Trump is not allowed?
Yes, I mean, Rick Scott is certainly serving as Trump's spokesperson in this case, and I think he is trying to defend him the best he can because the lawfare campaign, the multiple cases that are currently in limbo are, I think, clear to many Republicans and independents that this is unjustified, political persecution against a former president. But I just, what National Review has covered, the big picture view of this case with Stormy Daniels is that the purpose of the trial as it stands right now is to damage Trump. But what Stormy Daniels' testimony is absolutely irrelevant to the facts of the case or really what's happening, because Alvin Bragg is doing something that violates the state constitution and the federal constitution, because what is listed in the indictment is not the case that he's actually bringing. So there's like a contradiction there, and there's a lot of distractions about the salacious details, but none of that ultimately matters.
The defense has called for a mistrial. They've been denied in those calls. Kurt, how would you respond to what Caroline just said?
Well, the one thing I want to address here, it was interesting that what Senator Rick Scott just said. Okay. Because following his, quote, logic that the judge is tainted because family members are perhaps active Democrats in some way, well, then what would you say about the Supreme Court justices who accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars of patronage from conservatives who have flown them all around the world on private jets and to private islands? I just say, what standard are we going to have here? If one thing is true, then the other has to be as well. All that aside, I think that you're seeing, again, this is an extraordinary legal situation. We have never seen this in the United States of America. Alvin Bragg is going to end up having to, defend the case that he's putting forward, and whether or not that ends up being successful, we'll see. Was it risky to put Stormy Daniels on the stand this way and have her go into the salacious details that she did? Potentially. We'll see what the jury thinks of that. But ultimately, let's be clear. If Donald Trump wants an opportunity to defend himself, he can take the stand. Nothing is stopping him from doing that, by the way.
Right. He could, when it moves to the defense, prosecution's not going to call him, but the defense could call him as a witness. We'll see whether that's happened or whether that does happen. By the way, what's happening right now is Mershon is listening. We've gone past 4:30. It's 4:34. Usually about 4:30 they break for the day. Mershon is listening to this argument for a mistrial, Caroline. So you were talking about earlier some areas where people think this trial's unfair. A lot of that's politics. But what about the legal arguments that might be made here? It doesn't seem like there'd be very good odds, I don't think, that a mistrial. I was saying earlier to our legal analysts and experts that maybe they're just pushing to have some stuff in the record in case they want to set themselves up for an appeal. But he is listening to these arguments. We saw this the other day as well.
Right. I think it remains to be seen, what the outcome of that will be. But again, Andy McCarthy, my colleague, he's written about the legal quagmires extensively, and there are cases against Trump. There's litigation that has merit, such as the documents case. And there are ones that don't. And again, the Stormy Daniels controversy and the scandal, that's the main thing that the Democrats are trying to captivate the public's attention with, because it is disturbing and perverse. And there's a lot of confusing timeline and chronology with the publisher. And that's really what is that's the goal, is to make that kind of a hold headspace for people. But ultimately, it's the legal side.
I wonder where they got that idea from. It couldn't have been the Star Report. That didn't happen, did it?
Listen for 1 second. This is interesting in some ways, is because there's a legal question here about what the case is about. This is what you were talking about earlier, Caroline. And then there's the court of public opinion, political questions that you guys are experts in about how this is all going to be perceived. Because Todd Blanche, who's Trump's attorney, just said a minute ago in court, this is a quote from him, "This is not a case about sex. Whether or not it happened has nothing to do with the case." So he's making this as a legal argument. And what they're trying to do is say that because of the Stormy Daniels testimony, all the salacious testimony, there should be a mistrial. That's literally is being heard right now. But what do you think about that, Kurt, in terms of how that plays in the political race? That's what you said. It was extraordinary. It is, because this is happening in the middle of a presidential race with the person on trial running for president, and he's already the former president. How does all that play in the political race? And could there be, the grievance campaign of Trump where he says, hey, they are out to get me. They got stuff on the stand that has nothing to do with the case?
I think that it's a net negative for Trump for a couple of reasons. Number one, anybody who is with him on this is a political attack from Joe Biden, by the administration, already Donald Trump anyway. There are no new people who are going to go, you know what, Donald Trump's getting a bad rap, I'm voting for him. That universe of voters does not exist. All that this does is inflame the people who are Republicans, who have heartburn about Donald Trump yet again, and are just really, really hesitant to pull that lever for him. And we're kind of seeing some of that play out in the fact that in primary after primary, long after Nikki Haley has left the race, she's still getting 1 out of 5 Republican votes. Like, there is a big pocket of Republican voters who do not want to vote for Trump. Hearing salacious details about a married man having affairs with porn stars and Playboy playmates is not going to help.
Yeah, it might not help with that group. Now,